Hey guys, welcome to the next session of the O3 training. And today's session, we're going to move to setting up constraints to run these optimizations. So on the last video, we saw how to use the options tab. So the constraints is pretty much an extension of the options tab, but it is more granular as you will have the ability to set constraints at different levels, and we're going to show you how to do that.
And I just make the point that this will be the tab you'll likely spend most of your time on as a user.
So a quick overview of the default constraints that you see loaded when you download the input file. So there are three types of constraints you see here. The aggregate over CY16, the aggregate over post period, and then there's something called a weekly with a fix here, and a weekly constraint. So in short, these are the three types of constraints you can use. So it's either aggregate, a weekly, or a weekly fix. So to start with, we're going to show you how you would go about reading these constraints. So I'm going to start with something pretty simple, which could be the weekly fix. So how one reads these constraints, you would start from the left. So when you can see that the column here is weekly, it tells the optimizer on what level does the constraint apply, whether it is going to be on every single week, which is the weekly, or if it is going to be on an aggregate of weeks or over several weeks, and in which case you will use the word aggregate. So all of these fields here act as filters. So if you chose to write something here, say EMEA, it'll filter to all the fields that contain the word EMEA. So where is this data coming from? All of this data is in the current plan tab. So you can see that the data here has just 2 lines. So these are the only 2 lines of media that we have in the plan for 2016. And so these are the levels of filters that you can currently do on the current plan tab. So your next question is probably going to be, so why do I see the other constraints? So you see the other constraints here as a result of the fact that these campaigns had existed before, but they are not currently being planned. So we are allowing you or providing you with the option of using campaigns that existed in the past but not currently. So these are default constraints. Moving forward, as I said, all of these are filters, and assume that you had several countries. You could pretty much say you could filter on Germany, and this constraint would only apply on Germany. But in this case, it's just all the data is specific to France and France Listerine. So on the last line here, you can see something called pre-period. So long story short, our data is divided into 3 sections: the pre-period, the current year, and the post-period. So for 2016, the pre-period will be Q4 2015. And then you have the full year 2016, and then the post period being Q1 2017. So you can use the data for the full year interchangeably. For instance, if you wanted to run a 2017 optimization, all you need to do is replace your full year 2016 plan with your full year 2017 plan, and there you have it. You can now do a 2017 optimization. So as I said, pre-period here is your Q4 2015, and we would like to take account of the effect of media coming into the start of the year 2016, and unfortunately we do not have the ability to move the media because time has already gone by. So what we would like to do is fix the flighting so we can fix the effect of media in Q4 2015, so we can read its impact in Q1 2016. So to go about fixing a constraint, all you need to do is specify weekly, the period on which you would like to apply, and on any of the data at any level you'd want to specify, set fix equal to 1, and you would use the constraint.
So quick question, how do I define what weeks are in that pre-period?
All right, so if you want to define or redefine what weeks exist in the pre-period, you would go, or on any period, you would go to the time periods tab. So on the time periods tab, you can see here the different periods that are predefined. For instance, the pre-period here starts on week 1 and ends on week 13. Similarly, CY16 starts on week 14, ends on week 65.
Okay. So if I had, if I wanted to bring more data into my pre-period, I could, if I wanted more than just a quarter?
Yes, you can. These numbers can be switched by you at any point in time, but I would refrain from doing this because when you it becomes a little hard to you need to make sure that you remember the changes you make.
Across all the data. Yeah. Okay.
And now moving back to the constraints tab. So this constraint here on the post period says the total spend on Listerine Digital in the post period, in this case being Q1 2017, cannot exceed $100,000 or $103,000. So that's how you read this one. And the weekly constraint here, you can see that by the week, oral care mouthwash range digital in the total period, which is all 78 weeks, cannot exceed $63,765 in any given particular week.
Yeah. So quick question for you. What are the min PCT columns?
So min percent and max percent are relative percentages of the current plan. So, and that was a good lead up to the last type of constraint where you can use percentages to define constraints. So what this aggregate constraint does is it applies on all the fields in the year 2016 where you're forcing your minimum spend and your maximum spend to be 100% of the current plan. So remember when we said in our previous video the budget is going to remain flat, or where the current spend is going to be equal to the optimal spend, this constraint enforces that. So we're saying that you should spend at least 100% of the current plan, and you cannot spend more than 100% of the current plan.
So if I were to change or update my current plan in the current plan tab, will that mean that this constraint will update as well in the optimization?
That is exactly correct. It is always relative to the current plan. So if you, for instance, if you added another 3 weeks of TV onto your plan, you're going to get the total including those 3 weeks in your optimization.
So that makes it quite quick. That's really cool.
And so this kind of brings us to a wrap on how you read the constraints tab. On the next video, we will be going over how to set constraints and running an optimization to see how things change.